Imagine your phone dies while you are far from the road. No blue dot, no saved route, no voice telling you to turn left in 200 feet. Just hills, trees, light, wind, and the uncomfortable fact that every direction looks possible. Now make the problem older, no compass, no paper map, no street names. For most of human history, getting lost was not annoying. It could be fatal, so how did ancient humans find their way? The short answer is that they did not carry one map. They carried many small ones, in memory, in muscle, in stories, in the sky, and in the land itself. The first map was the landscape. A ridge was not just a ridge, it was the long back of the place where the valley bends. A river was not blue decoration. It was a line you could follow, a warning that low ground was near, and a way to remember where animals, plants, and people might be. Modern wayfinding research often separates spatial knowledge into landmarks, routes, and broader survey knowledge. In plain English, first you remember points. Then you remember paths between points. Over time, you begin to understand how the whole area fits together. That matters because a person without a drawn map can still know a place in a map-like way. The memory is not a flat object. It is a set of relationships. The big rock sits before the narrow pass. The pass drops toward water. The water leads toward the camp unless the seasonal flood has changed the crossing. There is another trick hidden inside that kind of memory. Direction depends on where you stand. A landmark that looks obvious while leaving camp may look almost useless on the way back. The same rock has a different outline. The same hill hides a different valley. Skilled travelers had to remember routes from more than one angle because survival often depended on returning through a landscape that no longer looked like the morning version of itself. But landmarks alone are not enough. Fog comes in, snow covers tracks, darkness removes color. A familiar tree falls. The brain still needs a running estimate of movement. This is where path integration, sometimes called dead reckoning, comes in. The basic idea is simple. As you move, your body and brain keep a rough account of distance and direction. You walked this long, you turned this much, the ground sloped upward. The wind stayed on one side of your face. It is useful. It is also dangerous if you trust it too much. Small errors add up. A few degrees wrong at the start of a walk can become a big miss after several miles. That is why skilled navigation usually needs correction. The body keeps score, but the world checks the score. That checking could be constant. A traveler might notice that the slope feels wrong, that the expected stream sound is missing, or that the wind is hitting the wrong cheek. None of those clues has to shout. The point is that navigation is a loop, move, predict, compare, correct. Do that all day. And the route becomes less like a line on a page and more like a conversation with the ground. Ancient travelers likely stacked cues together. A hill line gave one bearing. The sun gave another. A stream confirmed the route. Tracks or bird movement added a hint. None of these had to be perfect. Together, they narrowed the possible world. The sky was part of that world. The sun changes position through the day, so it can help with direction if you know the time and season. Stars can work too, especially when a culture has trained people to read them. Traditional non-instrument ocean navigation shows how humans can use stars, swells, wind, clouds, birds, and other signs together. But this is where we have to be careful. Not every ancient person was a star navigator. Not every landscape needed the same skills. A forest, a desert, a coastline, open grassland, sea ice, and ocean water all ask different things from the traveler. That is the hidden part of ancient navigation. It was local. A good route was not just go north. It was follow this dry rise after the rains, or avoid that hollow when the river is high, or watch for the place where the birds cut across before evening. It was also a calendar. The route that worked in one month could become foolish in another. A dry shortcut might turn into mud. A shallow crossing might become dangerous. A valley that offered berries, shade, and animal movement in one season might be nearly useless later. To know the way, you had to know when the way changed. Some of the strongest evidence for this kind of knowledge comes from traditional route systems. Inuit trails across land, snow, and sea ice were not empty lines to people who knew them. They connected places, names, camps, ice conditions, hunting areas, and family knowledge. Researchers working with records and place names have shown how wide these route networks could be. Australian Aboriginal songlines are another example of route knowledge held in culture, though we should not flatten them into old GPS. They can connect places, memory, law, story, and movement across country. For navigation, the key point is that humans can make geography memorable by tying it to sequence, rhythm, names, and meaning. That may sound strange if you grew up with maps on screens, but memory loves sequence. If you can remember a song, you can remember an order. If each part of the song belongs to a hill, waterhole, pass, or camp, the route is no longer random space. It becomes a line of remembered attention. So ancient navigation was also social technology. Children did not have to rediscover every route alone. People watched older travelers. They heard names. They learned where water lasted in dry months, where animals crossed, where stone could be found, and which paths were safe only in certain seasons. That social part matters because memory fails. One person can forget a bend, misread a shadow, or trust yesterday's trail too much. A group can correct itself. Someone remembers the second crossing. Someone knows the ridge that looks close but wastes half a day. Someone has heard the warning story about the beautiful path that leads away from water. In that sense, the map was not only inside one head, it was spread through a community. Under all of this was the brain. In 2014, the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine went to researchers whose work helped explain the brain's positioning system. Place cells and grid cells are part of how animals, including humans, represent location and movement through space. One modern example makes this easier to picture. London taxi drivers have to learn a huge street network, a training process famous as the knowledge. A 2000 study found navigation-related structural differences in their hippocampi. That does not mean ancient people had taxi driver brains. It does show that hard route learning can leave a mark in the brain. For a mobile forager, that kind of learning was not a hobby. It was daily life. Where is the water after 3 dry weeks? Which valley has shade at midday? Which ridge gets you home if the weather changes? Which landmark looks obvious from one side but disappears from the other? And getting lost did not always mean wandering in circles. Sometimes it meant choosing the wrong return route and reaching water too late. Sometimes it meant crossing open ground when shade was gone. Sometimes it meant missing the camp by a small distance in bad light, then spending the coldest part of the night trying to correct the mistake. Navigation was tied to timing. That is why ancient route knowledge probably included more than directions. A useful route also carried warnings. This crossing works after light rain, not after a flood. This ridge is easy in the morning, brutal in the heat. This animal trail looks promising, but it bends away from the water. In a world without signs, those details were the signs. This is one reason GPS can make us feel oddly helpless. The phone gives instructions, but it often steals the need to notice. You arrive without learning the shape of the journey. The ancient traveler had no such bargain. Attention was the price of moving safely, and attention is tiring. That is easy to miss from a couch. Ancient wayfinding was not just a clever brain trick. It was fatigue, weather, hunger, children, injuries, fading light, and the pressure of needing the route to be right. The impressive part is not that humans never got lost. They did. The impressive part is that they built so many ways to recover before a mistake became disaster. So the answer is not that ancient humans had one secret method. They had a stack: landmarks, route memory, body movement, sky cues, weather, animals. Social teaching, brain systems tuned by practice. No single cue had to be flawless. The power came from overlap. If the sun was hidden, the ridge still spoke. If the path was covered, the river still bent. If memory wavered, a place name or story could pull the route back into order. A paper map freezes the world onto a surface. Ancient navigation kept the world alive. It asked you to notice what changed, what stayed, and what those changes meant for the next step. Without maps, ancient humans did not walk through blank space. They walked through a landscape full of instructions. We are the ones who forgot how loud those instructions can be.